Are you a Filipino living in Middle East, Europe, Asia and the Pacific, USA or Canada? You are our story. You are our Filipinos world.
The Filipinos World every Saturday 5 to 6:30 p.m. only in the Filipinos World and the Manila Times Facebook pages.
Sign up for a year and pay less than 71 pesos per month. Visit tmt.ph/premium to get your free 30 days of the Manila Times Premium.
This program is in partnership with the Manila Times, ASUL TV, and brought to you by Labmodul, BEXCS Logistics Solutions.
Maayong hapon, magandang hapon, marahay na hapon sa Injogabos, Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao at sa buong Pilipinos around the world. Ako po si Agnes at nanonood kayo dito sa The Filipinos World version 3. We are broadcasting live streaming via facebook.com/The Filipinos World and The Filipinos World YouTube channel, the Manila Times Online and ASUL TV Facebook pages powered by Mafae Management Consultancy. Ngayon ay Sabado, ika-5 ng Oktubre, taong 2024 at 81 days na lang bago ang Pasko. So, handa-handa na tayo sa mga more or less 2.5 months. Pasko na sa buong Pilipinas at Pasko na sa buong mundo. Ang talakayan natin ngayong hapon ay Is Philippines a Critical Global Semiconductor Industry? Pero bago natin i-introduce ang ating panauhin na ating host ngayong hapon, pahintulutan muna nating ibigay or ilahad ang background about the semiconductor industry in the Philippines. Last year, 2023, ang US-based Semiconductor Industry Association or SIA recognized Philippines as a critical player in the global semiconductor industry and a major hub for semiconductor assembly and test manufacturing. SIA or Semiconductor Industry Association shared investment projects and business opportunities in the Philippines for the passage of the CHIPS Act of the United States. Last month naman, September 2024, the Philippines launched a series of strategic kick-off sessions to advance its role in the global semiconductor industry, focusing on the workforce development and public policy. These sessions are part of the International Technology Security and Innovation Fund, or ITSI Fund, the key initiative of the CHIPS and Science Act, designed to enhance semiconductor capabilities and supply chain resilience worldwide. It was organized by the U.S. Department of State and Arizona State University, or ASU, with a board of investments. The kick-off sessions will bring together key stakeholders from the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, the Office of Special Assistant to the President for Investment and Economic Affairs, or OCTA, Department of Education, or DepEd, the Commission on Higher Education, or CHED, and Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESTA, the local government officials, ATP industry leaders and representatives from top engineering and technology universities and colleges, vocational colleges. These sessions will identify the Philippines' strengths and challenges in the semiconductor sector and formulate action plans to enhance its capabilities. The Philippines is one of the strategic countries selected for this initiative, along with Costa Rica, Mexico, Panama, Indonesia, and Vietnam, all supported by the U.S. Department of State. And the department is soon to award the Arizona State University of around $13.8 million to drive talent development and formulate public policy recommendations across the nations. So magandang oportunidad yan, and for our country, no, especially for those who'd like to know about the semiconductor industry. Joining me with this afternoon is, of course, our host, the OCTA Research Fellow and University Professor, Dr. Guido David. Good afternoon, Dr. Guido, and welcome to the Filipinos World once again.
Hi, good afternoon, my friend Agnes, and also to our very helpful production crew dito sa the Filipinos World. Also our different hosts sa other time slots natin, other Saturdays that we don't co-host. And also I'd like to greet lang my mother who watches, EJ, and some of my other friends, followers Twitter, Joyce, and other, family members, and ganon. Yeah.
Friends.
Marami talaga sa Twitter. I consider them my friends. Kahit binabash nila ako.
Actually, a lot have been following you already, and it's we're very, very proud to have you here in the Filipinos World, Dr. Guido, and always grateful for saying yes to be the host here. So thank you for that.
It's my pleasure. It's our public service, Agnes, to push our advocacies for our kababayans.
Definitely. Okay. So, mayroon tayong guest this afternoon, Dr. Guido. Would you have the pleasure to introduce him?
Yes, and I'd like to invite him. I invited him, and I'd like, hopefully, we could bring him on screen. But our guest is Dr. Dan Lachica of SEIPI. So he's, specialist. He's an engineer and very, familiar with semiconductors. He's an expert in that. So we want to discuss that as our topic for today. I actually had the pleasure of, I've met Dan before online, but I just met him in person last week sa awarding ng Gawad Lagablab. So congratulations din. Yes, he just received an award sa Gawad Lagablab. Another awardee there is civil service.
Ayun ba yung pinuntahan mo last week after the show? Was that
yes, that was the one. Si Carla Nograles actually was an awardee also.
So Agawad Lagablab is organized by whom? Was organized by whom?
This is the Philippine Science High School
okay.
Alumni Association.
All right. Okay, good to know. So the Mr. Dan Lachica is one of the awardees. In what category was it?
I think he could tell us, but in business and research also. Well, yung Dan could qualify for both. I mean, maybe not for government, but in research and in, entrepreneurial, entrepreneurship.
Okay, is he around? Can we put him in? So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our guest for this afternoon, the president of Semiconductor Electronics and what was the name again? Electronics and
it's for para simple lang we call it
semiconductor and electronic industries in the Philippines.
Philippines. Yes. Good afternoon, Dr. Dan, and also I don't know if you're a teacher, pero I just want to say Happy Teachers Day to all the teachers. Ako rin may mga nagbati sa akin because Agnes, I'm a teacher. Yes, thank you. So happy teachers and good afternoon, almost good evening, Dr. Dan.
Good afternoon. And yes, I did teach before when I first came back in '96. I taught at the Ateneo University, the Graduate School of Business.
Okay. So yeah, so you're you deserve that recognition as a teacher, and we brought you
Thank you.
in. Yes, because the industry right now for semiconductors, and I think you had this interview with Cito Beltran of Signal some time ago, and you were making recommendations to the administration. Tayo naman, Dr. Dan, just like me, just like Agnes, I am politically agnostic. We're political. I mean, ang kulay natin is kayo mangge. I mean, we're pro-Filipino, di ba? Tama ba, Agnes, di ba?
Of course we are. Of course we
Of
are.
course, right. We're just pushing for the interest and the betterment of the nation. And yun nga, we are aware na, well, actually, kasama sa mga tatanong ko, how is the Philippines in the semiconductor world? Because today's world depends heavily on the semiconductor industry.
Uh,
Um,
that's correct. Pero siguro before I start, I'll give you a background on the electronics industry. So last year for 2023, we accounted for $45.6 billion of export, 62% of the country's commodity exports, and actually employs 400,000 direct and another 2.8 million indirect workers. And when I say indirect workers, that would cover those who are actually handling the product and those that support the factory in terms of, the shuttle bus drivers, the security guards, the canteen workers, and the like. So it really is a big part of our economy. Mga 13% of our country's GDP can be attributed to the semiconductor and electronics industry. Ngayon, out of that $45.6 billion, 70% of that comes from semiconductors, which would be the integrated circuits or the chips that you put in electronic devices. And the other 30%, yeah, you're seeing the chips there on PC boards. The other 30% would be the devices that are actually assembled. They can be consumer computer products, consumer electronics, um, storage devices, even EVs and automobiles. So yun yung 30% ng ating $45.6 billion.
Yeah, Dr. Dan, yeah, so you gave us a background on the semiconductor industry in the Philippines. Sige, siguro medyo backtrack lang a little bit. How did you get involved in this? And I mean, I noticed you have an engineering degree, but you also have a doctorate in business. So are you more of an
Yeah.
entrepreneur than an engineer, or parang 50-50, parang a little of both?
Well, please excuse me. I have this allergy cough, so I might cough every so often. I had my BSW. Of course, after graduating from Philippine Science, I went to UP Diliman and finished an electrical engineering degree. Kasi nung panahon na yun, wala pang ECE sa UP eh.
Right.
And my
Yes.
first job was with Procter and Gamble, and after 3.5 years, I went to the United States and worked in Silicon Valley in what you call the semiconductor front end wafer fab. And what that is you start with blank silicon wafers, bilog na wafers, and then you put on the devices, transistors, diodes, and the like. Tapos, pag nabuo yun, what you have now is a completed semiconductor wafer, and then pinapadala na yan sa the back-end operation, which is, as you mentioned earlier, is assembly, test, and packaging. And that, when I was in Silicon Valley up to about from 1980 to 96, um, wafer fabs were in Silicon Valley and most of the United States. Now, eventually, the U.S. decided to offshore yung mga semiconductor wafer fabs. Assembly, test, and packaging was still sent mostly to Asia, no? And so what had happened, you mentioned the CHIPS Act. What had happened was the United States recognized its vulnerability. Kasi yung fabrication of wafers and the chips, na unahan na sila, no? They've been overtaken by other countries, China, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, ano, among others, South Korea, no? So that's how the CHIPS Act was, I guess, that's what motivated the CHIPS Act, because they had a $52.9 billion fund to onshore, in other words, bring back the advanced wafer fabs to the United States. And that would be to ensure the semiconductor supply chain security, especially for the high-tech technologies which are on the wafers themselves. You know? So the CHIPS Act, a part of that, was carved out about $500 million in what you mentioned earlier, the International Technology Security and Innovation Fund. I should mention 6 countries are involved. In Southeast Asia, we have Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Now, the focus on the Philippines really would be to enhance or strengthen our assembly, test, and packaging capabilities, because, as you know, the advanced technologies that are being processed in the wafer fabs in the States with this CHIPS Act onshoring would require assembly, test, and packaging to be done, or the back end to be done. And since that's the strength, one of the strengths of the Philippines, the U.S. decided to, engage ASU, Arizona State University, to teach our professors and who will teach the students on these advanced ATP technologies. So the thing is, in 96, I decided, well, my dream before was to be able to enroll in Stanford. This kind of goes back to your other question. Um, and so I finally got accepted to Stanford on my MSEE program. Before that, I finished my my MBA in the United States already. So I decided to go for an MSEE. Now, the thing is, as I was in the middle of my first semester, a headhunter called me and asked if I would be interested to take on, to interview for an expat position to run a Philippine factory of a U.S. multinational. I
Wow.
was in a dilemma, but eventually, the call of home, overcame my desire to finish my Stanford degree. So I accepted the offer after I interviewed, and so I returned to the Philippines in '96, worked for a U.S. multinational as an expat. But when they decided to leave the Philippines after 3.5 years, my family, my wife decided she didn't want to leave the Philippines. So I gave up that expat position. They wanted me to move to Penang to run the factory there, but my wife said no. And naman, siyempre bibigyan natin ng kahalagahan ng ating may bahay. No? So I joined the Lopez Group and ran their electronics businesses for about 14 years. And when I came back, I decided to teach nga sa graduate school, because my mindset then was, I came from Silicon Valley. Not many of our professionals can experience Silicon Valley, let alone live there. So I decided to impart my knowledge and experience from Silicon Valley. Because to me, Silicon Valley is not just a place; it's a mindset, and that's what I wanted to teach the graduate students, aiming for their MBA. And so while I was running the factory, my parents kept egging me to finish my doctorate. So I enrolled at LaSalle naman to finish my doctorate in business. No, why did I not? Well, I was about to pursue the MS in electronics engineering, but my boss in the United States said, well, you already have a BSEE. You should just finish your degrees in business, so that you can be more well-rounded. And as you run factories, as you run plants, you can apply the business end of it to complement your electric engineering or electrical engineering degree, which made a lot of sense. And that's how I came about. I'm not an entrepreneur, so I've always been my forte has been running companies. But in fact, at one time I was running this company in the Philippines as well as in another country, you know. So that's been my career, so to speak. And in the process, well, here when I came back in the Philippines, I've actually been offered several government positions, but I felt that I would do more in terms of helping our country and our people by, helping from the private sector. I do have a lot of advisory roles, board roles in government, including DOST, DPI, and even at Philippine Science High School. I'm in the board of trustees and all.
Yes.
But I think the experience and the landscape from a business perspective would be helpful in helping our government agencies, structure their policies, structure their procedures, and so on. So that's how I ended up. I retired from the Lopez Group, uh, let's see, in 2013. And after that, I was engaged by the SEIPI Board of Trustees to run the foundation, which is the umbrella organization of over 300 electronics companies here in the Philippines. So that's my role now. I work with government. When there are investors coming in, government tells me to give them the landscape, the environment, and all that. So, and then last week was really very significant because the ASU and State Department folks came here for 6 days, 3 days of which were devoted to the workforce development part. That was, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the previous week, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week, they focused on the regulatory environment. While the focus is just on ATP, for the Philippines, when you talk about the regulatory environment, the ease of business, ease of doing business, policies, and all that, it's meaningful to not just the electronics industry but other industries as well. The only thing I was careful to point out to the U.S. State Department and also to, well, I work with the Private Sector Advisory Council to the President with PSAC, is that yes, the Philippines is strong in assembly, test, and packaging, but we need to be mindful of the fact that if you really want to ensure the semiconductor security, the supply chain, we can't ignore the need for a wafer fabrication facility. And as I said earlier, our industry in the Philippines depends on getting wafers, which are supplied mostly from Taiwan, TSMC from Taiwan, which supplies more than 70% of the world's demand for wafers. And my concern is, with what we've seen in the West Philippine Sea, well, what if some disruption also happens with Taiwan? Um, if a certain country decides to take over Taiwan and disrupt our supply chain, and so that's what I've been telling our government. That's what I've been telling all the U.S. officials that I can talk to. But there doesn't seem to be, I guess, as taking it seriously. That threat is serious, I believe otherwise. Until the other day, I was listening to this news about the U.S. increasing its naval capacity by 80%, targeting the year 2027. And the reason for that is they're preparing for a potential attack on Taiwan by 2027, which was declared by this other country. And so that kind of reinforced what I was thinking. I didn't think it would happen by 2027, but the reality is there is a serious threat. And the thing is, if we don't react on that threat now, then we'll be caught with our pants down. We'll be caught, so the electronics industry as we know it today, uh, we won't recognize it. We'll lose the employment, we'll lose the export generation. So my crusade, so to speak, nowadays is to whoever will listen, uh, I'm trying to, of course, working with the government, the OSAPEA, Secretary Go, Secretary Solidum, before with Secretary Fred, and now with Secretary Chris Roque of DTI, is to push through with lab scale wafer fab to get us started, get us started in terms of training the people, developing the supply chain, improving the infrastructure. Because once I believe that once we show our ability, our capability to support a wafer fab, then just like in the movie Field of Dreams, right? You build it and they will come. In other words, commercial wafer fabs will eventually come, which would behoove us to push through with. Because right now in the Philippines, we have, if you look at assembly, test, and packaging, upstream you will see the IC design. We have a growing industry in IC design, and then the assembly, test, and packaging. What's missing in between is the wafer fab. So, and it's expensive, high tech nano geometry wafer fab being built in the States. One of them could cost anywhere from 15 to $20 billion. And
Wow.
obviously, we don't have that kind of money. And so, the other, I guess 2 weeks ago, I was talking to the global CEO of McKinsey, a known consulting group. And I'm glad he agreed with my concern that the Philippines should really be in the wafer fab, but not in the leading edge technologies because we don't have $20 billion. But start off with the trailing edge because there's enough demand in the world, for the trailing edge technologies. At least that will get us started. It's not going to be as expensive, and it'll help us develop our credibility. Now the thing is, it's still gonna cost a lot of money. Maybe up to about 20 billion pesos. Um, so here's my wild idea. I was gonna hopefully look for a company, maybe a Taiwanese company, and ask them if they'd be interested to donate depreciated wafer fab equipment to the Philippines. And we can use that to train our people and also train their people, which they can deploy as OFWs in their fabs all over the world. So we hit two birds with one stone. We enhance our semiconductor capability and we improve our OFW remittances in a
Yeah,
high tech environment.
yeah.
So
That is
you know,
very interesting. I know, Sir Danny, if I may just
sure, sure.
that's very interesting because you have mentioned OFWs as a workforce, and that would presumably be on reskilling and upskilling their abilities way back when when they have the opportunity to come back and return here in the country, knowing that Philippines has been identified as one of the 6 countries to be trained and develop this okay, skills development and public policy. Now, how would your organization, SEIPI, and in collaboration with DTI, maybe on what other organization or agencies there are, could somehow, attract that they be part of this skills development, as mentioned in the back introduction? I want to
Well,
know, okay, putting them on board in the spot.
yeah, I think, well, first of all, upscaling and reskilling is my other job on this USAID project, Advanced Manufacturing Workforce Skills Development.
Mhm.
It's a $5.6 million project funded by USAID with local partner Unilab Foundation. I'm the chief of party, another part-time job of mine, if you will. And our
Mhm.
goal really is to identify the needs. So we started with electronics and pharma industries
Yeah.
to determine the skills needed by the workers. Because unfortunately, the graduates of our college education don't have all the skills that are needed by industries. I think we've been trying to convince Ched to talk to the industries and see what they need so that they can, improve the curricula. But to date, we haven't been successful. I mean, in fact, SEIPI has submitted recommendations 11 years ago and nothing has happened. So hopefully, one of these days, we could get audience and get some action out of Ched. So anyway, we will continue to do that. But going
Mhm.
back to your question, um, DTI, DOST, OSAPE are on board. So we don't really need to uh, beg them. They understand the strategic value. But the reality is today, we will support the development or enhancement of the ATP skills because it's low hanging fruit, and the
Mhm.
US has actually funded to the tune of about $13.9 billion, no, $1 million, I should
Million,
say,
million.
so
It's a
that
million.
ASU can train our professors, and we can enhance their skills. The problem is, where are they going to practice these skills that they learn? So
Yes.
what
Yeah,
what i'm
exactly.
what I'm doing is looking for SEIPI members who can help by providing a virtual lab or a real lab, so that these professors can practice the skills that they learn from the ITSI Fund project, no?
How are you going to choose the what's this participants for this development? Are those agencies going to choose, or what if there are interested individuals? Do they gonna apply, or how do they qualify? Do you have such kind of ruling, or a process?
DOI is working with PSAC to identify the universities that will send something like 100 or 120 professors to join this ASU implemented project for training.
Mhm.
So yeah, Agnes. So just to what I got out of this is, um, uh, Sir Dan is saying that we have capacity for semiconductors in the country already,
Yeah.
but more of assembly, and we still depend on these wafers, which are only manufactured. Well, 70% of the global supply is manufactured in Taiwan by TSMC. I mean, of course, that's partly why Taiwan became as wealthy as it is now. I mean, compared to maybe in the 90s they were already okay, and but this kind of power, and just to give our viewers and listeners a background, yung chips these are that they manufacture, tama ba Dan? I mean, these are
Yes.
used in cell phones. I mean, these are the processors, the microprocessors that are used in laptops, but not just in laptops and cell phones, but now even in vehicles and
AI.
machine cars. Yes, and AI.
Yes.
This is AI depends. I mean, I'm an AI person, so AI depends on these semiconductors, and that's why Nvidia has become like a world leader in in chips. The assembled chips. Um, so, and what Dan is proposing is that instead of us depending on Taiwan for these imported materials, the wafers, somehow we upscale and start to build it here in the country, using maybe older technology. At least we can build some of the more, maybe not as high end, or wafers, or chips, because some of them are really very, in terms of nanometers, are very very small. And so Siguro we can build something like, I don't know, Dan, like 10-year old, you know te- technology that's behind by 10 years, which is maybe sufficient. I'm just guessing based on my
Yeah.
limited knowledge. And I want to also ask Sid, then, in the 1990s, I remember this because I got into computers in early 2000s, late 90s, and the Philippines was one of the manufacturers of Intel processors at that
Yeah.
time. I mean, they were outsourcing. They had the plant in Laguna. um, Intel. I mean, Intel was one of the most fastest rising companies at that time. They were producing Intel Pentium processors and everything. So some of them were manufactured in the Philippines, some were in Malaysia, but they pulled out after some time. So ano ba yung ginagawa at that time sa Intel? Were they assembling the whole package, or just like what we're doing now? Now we're importing wafers and then assembling them. And yun nga, somehow we lost this opportunity because Intel moved out of the country. But but yeah, siguro
Yeah.
my question is, yeah, more or less.
Well, there were a lot of reasons. First of all, Intel was one of those U.S. multinationals that assembled, test, and package the wafers they received from other Intel wafer fabs, and also maybe some outsourced wafers. But there were a number of reasons that I guess drove them out, if you will. There was a concern about the structure in of the facility in Cavite. There were concerns about the threat of militant labor. There were concerns about some of the staff that they had. So it was, I guess, a lot of factors. And the other big factor is they were given a very attractive package by China to move the factory over there. So it's unfortunate, but make a long story short, there was multiple factors that drove them out. And unfortunately, even as we tried to get them back, they moved to China, to Vietnam, which again offered better incentives than what we had and better operating conditions.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, so that's unfortunate that China basically outbid us for these for Intel. Um, but the current technology that we use, is it something along those lines? So we package, we assemble chips, to my understanding, and then you have this bold idea. Is this what you proposed in your show, Quesito Beltran, to the administration, to the BBM administration? Is this
Um,
wild idea of yours the one that you proposed?
Now, this is actually a recent wild idea. Basically, when
Okay.
I was CITO at that time, I was just talking about general concerns which we see at that time. I mean, the previous administration really, sorry to say, but made a bad decision in uh, changing the incentives, what they call the incentives rationalization. I mean, the CREATE law was made up of two parts. The first part was to reduce the corporate income tax from
Mhm.
30 plus to 25%. That was good. In fact, maybe 25% is not even enough because it was still behind other ASEAN countries, But the big mistake really is to remove the incentive rationalization. And what we told the government then was, because the premise was to level the playing field for incentives, which I understand. But our appeal was, before you do that, let's level the playing field in terms of operating cost, which
Mhm.
includes the cost of power, the cost of logistics, the cost of even labor if you count all the holidays. But our inputs were ignored. And in fact, that time, one of the multinational companies, the country head told the administration, the minister we were talking to, that if the incentives rationalization pushes through, then their company will not put their expansion in the Philippines. Where lo and behold, 7 or 8 years. I mean, 6 months ago, Vietnam announced a $1.6 billion expansion of this company I was mentioning in Vietnam, and that should have been ours. That should have been ours. Their original plan was to put that in the Philippines. Had we not, messed up with the incentives rationalization, this minister refused to listen and basically said that, well, if you don't like it here, leave, right? Which was, I thought, a mistake, because we're talking about 10,000 new jobs, etc. But in fairness, I mean, I mentioned Intel leaving for China, but we also had big success in attracting Texas Instruments and Clark, because they have initially decided to move to China, but a government team delegation went to Dallas, Texas, and presented a proposal that was acceptable to Texas Instruments, and so that's how TI and Clark came about. So I think that was a success, and essentially it's the collaboration, partnership of government, industry that pulled that successful story. You know, and I'm hoping we can do that. I mean, frankly, I don't think the previous administration put any emphasis in electronics or semiconductors, but I'm glad that this new administration, under the leadership of President Marcos and, of course, with Secretary Frederick Go in Osapea, understand the need, understand the threats that we're facing, and actually supporting the semiconductor industry in upgrading our capabilities, and hopefully in addition to IC design and IC and assembly test and packaging, hopefully land semiconductor wafer fab, even a lab scale wafer fab that could get us started to eventually uh, host a commercial wafer fab.
So, Sir Dan, so you're saying that the current administration is moving forward. In what sense are we moving forward? I mean, aside from the DOST that you mentioned and other government institutions willing to go in this direction, but are there any other laws that you think should be changed, like give tax incentives or tax breaks, to this company that might be built around this semiconductor, industry with wafer manufacturing?
Well, DOST has been very supportive because last November we went to I was able to join the presidential delegation to San Francisco on the sidelines of the APEC meeting. And the president spoke with the Semiconductor Industry Association. And unfortunately, the Semiconductor Industry Association doesn't see the Philippines as a wafer fab power. They just see us as assembly, test, and packaging. So we just have to show that we're capable of doing it. But what the president said was, yes, please engage or invest in assembly, test, and packaging. But please don't forget that we also have we've started up an IC design industry, and hopefully you'll consider also a wafer fab. Now, when we came back, DOST arranged for a meeting and said, okay, what do we need to do to house that lab scale wafer fab? And then DTI, for its part, arranged for talk to Asian Development Bank and arrange for a loan to be able to update the industry roadmap. We have a 2018 industry roadmap that needs to be updated, including the feasibility for a wafer fab. Okay, and the Office of Secretary Go basically is asking the industry, what are your pain points? And it's really helping very proactively in addressing those pain points. Yes, there can be a lot of improvements that would benefit the industry. Of course, the ease of doing business. I'll give you an example. One agency, imposes this electronic tracking system called E-Track on the industry. When we told them, look, in the 50 years of the electronics industry, there has been no incidence of technical smuggling. Why will you put this redundant, unnecessary law or policy for the industry that generates, $45.6 billion and over 3 million direct and indirect workers? The reason we're given as well, we don't want to play favorites, which doesn't make sense. No. Another is during national elections, uh, there is a COMELEC tripartite committee that basically duplicates the work of the Philippine National Police in regulating permits transport for chemicals, which the industry uses for cleaning its components. And again, we told them, hey, there has been no incidence of these chemicals being stolen or diverted to use for weapons of mass destruction, whatever. So, this rules just don't make sense. I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but we just need to make sure that our decisions are risk based. And the industry, as it is, has complied with the laws, complied with the rules, and let's not make it difficult to attract investors. Because you know what? These multinationals will say, oh, why do you have this silly e-track policy? You're the only country that does that. The other countries that house our operations don't have that. why do you have these delays in transporting chemicals? You're the only country that does that. How are we going to attract investments if we have this, unnecessary, redundant rules, right? And so we're relying a lot on the support of the OSAPEA to hopefully, and ARTA, of course, we're working closely with Secretary Nes Perez with ARTA to kind of improve the regulatory environment and remove this redundant, if not unnecessary, regulations.
Yeah, ART is one of the agencies that was actually started even before this administration. But you have very excellent points that ease of doing business is one of the let's say major roadblocks in foreign investment in the country, and it's hindering. I mean, and Agnes will agree with me on this. Now, it's hindering our growth and our technological advancement. In many countries that develop innovation and research and technology, they have been really those it has been anchored around innovation and technology, and without ease of doing business, without the tax breaks and everything, I mean, even me as a researcher in the university, one of our pain points is the long procurement process, when we try to acquire equipment for our laboratories. Yes, right, Agnes. So it takes a long time to get these equipment. Sometimes they arrive, or we can purchase them 1 year later, and then our research already, I mean, if 1 year is a long time for research, and if you delay it by that much, I mean, aside from all this dead time that we have to face with. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, kung may nakikinig, and we don't want to get Dan in trouble, but it's the reality of it is that for us to move forward, we should have these kinds of changes, even in our policies. I mean, the government is willing, but that's half of it. We also have to make it easier for the business. Otherwise, they will just say, "Yeah, we'll just move to a different country and put our investment there, or we'll help this other country." Right, Agnes?
Yes, definitely, Dr. Guido. Actually, sometimes I'm too, how do you call this, focused on the labor aspect as to the processes. No, because I'm a former OFW, and definitely my concern is for our reintegrees or the returning Filipinos who may be a future beneficiaries of being upgraded or upskilled, if they be interested to be in the sector of the semiconductor industry. Maybe for now, let's pause for a break. When we come back, we'll still have a thorough discussion on why Philippines is considered a critical player globally on the semiconductor industry. Diyan lamang po kayo, magbabalik po ang The Philippines World.
Labmodul manufactures a highly distinctive and exclusive range of interior solutions that combines functional excellence with design appeal. Solutions with integrated, innovative, ergonomic features to well-designed workplaces. Our company is based on the inherent values that shape the core of who we are. It is through our living values that we continue to fulfill the promise of our ideal and environmental design standards. Each and every groundbreaking product we've introduced over the years has been the result of our team's hard work and dedication to provide our absolute best to who we care most about, who is our customers. Whether the job is big or small, our team is used to solving complicated tasks and makes sure to get projects to successful completion. Whether it is local or global. This is why Labmodul is known as one of Europe's leading manufacturers of innovative system solutions for devices used in laboratory facilities, hospitals, and educational facilities. Solutions that can be easily adapted to the growing needs and workflows demands of the future. Labmodul, designing safety.
Welcome back, and you're still watching with us live here in the Filipinos world for our episode 8 is Philippines, a critical player on global semiconductor industry with our guest, Dr. Dan Lachica, and of course our host, Dr. Guido David. But before that, before throwing to our guest and our host, let me say thank you to our sponsors, Bayanihan Express. For those Filipinos, especially abroad, who may want to have or yung wala nang magkaroon ng problema sa kanilang balikbayan box, no, Bayanihan Express will soon be launched as the alternative solution to your balikbayan. So, instead na bumili kayo sa ibang bansa, nandito na sa Pilipinas at madali na lang po ang pag-ship ng inyong mga goods or inyong mga box. And then, of course, would like to thank, for information, you can look up to their website, www.bexlogistics.com, if I'm right. All right. And also, if you have requirement on the furniture system on a laboratory facilities sa mga medical sciences or hospitals, kaya maaari kayong mag-send ng email sa Labmodul at info@labmodul.com or check their website at www.labmodul.com. We'd also like to say thanks to our partners, the DOSTI Forward. That's for those OFWs interested to have a small-scale business. You may please send your intent via email at ifwdph@dost.ncr.gov.ph. At salamat din sa PLDT Global for being our partner. They have this 10-bull tindahan ni Bossing. It's an application for the OFWs to know what are the different services and programs available for them. And of course, the Manila Times, Mr. Dante Ang, thank you for being our partner. And ASUL TV, Mr. Roy Batu. And of course, this live stream would be possible without a partnership with Mafae Management Consultancy. So we'll have again our guest and our host. Over to you, Dr. David.
Yeah, thank you, Agnes. So, of course, we have our guest, Dr. Dan Lachica, the president of SEIPI. And na-mention mo, Agnes, na Philippines is a global player in the semiconductor industry. I was actually surprised when I heard this. I thought, Taiwan dominated the field, but actually, apparently, as Dan mentioned, we're involved in part of the supply chain, even though end to end, it's not in our capability because we don't manufacture these wafers. But that is the golden dream. And how much would that help, Dr. Dan? If that, sabi natin, let's just daydream for a little bit here. And I understand yung threat of China maybe moving in to Taiwan, but let's say, I'm optimistic and, things are, nobody wants a war. And if things go bad, everyone is affected. All parties everyone's a loser when there's a war. But what is your, how, if we daydream, what would be the extent of this? I know obviously this will bring a lot of jobs, but what do you see if this were to transpire? Itong bringing in this technology of manufacturing wafers, even not the very high end wafers that's used for the chips that we use in our cell phones. So, Dr. Dan, so what would be like? Would this be like the parang I don't know, the the chest at the end of the rainbow, parang ganun for us Philippines?
Yeah. Thanks for that question, Dr. Guido. Um, Before I answer that, no, I just wanted to make sure. Well, by the way, I was careful not to mention the name of the country. We might all get in trouble.
Well,
But anyway,
I
we all know.
apologize. Yeah.
But anyway, as I was gonna say earlier, no, um, we are working very closely with other government agencies, including TESDA and DOF. Secretary Recto was really one of our allies during the discussions on the Creator. He understood what the concerns were. Unfortunately, we were overruled, so to speak. So again, we're working with them. Hopefully, we provided their inputs on the Create More. Um, Hopefully, many of the I guess negative actions taken by the previous administration will be remedied by Create More. As I mentioned earlier, when they took away the 5% corporate income tax for exporters, it did a couple of, I guess, detrimental things. The first one was, of course, it removed the ability to compensate for the high operating costs. But the other, and perhaps more important, was it kind of eroded the credibility of the country in terms of honoring sovereign contracts, because they invested in the Philippines, these multinationals, based on the contracts that they signed. And then you take away previous administration took that away. What does that say in terms of sovereign guarantees for government contracts? So those were the two big negative factors. But I'm glad with Secretary Ralph Recto, with Secretary Decgo, and of course, like I said, DOST and Secretary Rene and the new Secretary Chris Roque, um, and with the support of ARTA and the other agencies, we're going to be able to hopefully rectify some of these missteps and all mishaps. The other thing I'd like to talk about is our education system, because obviously, as I've said earlier, we need to upskill and work skill. But if we start and improve, on our education system, there'll be a long ways to go. And I'm referring to starting with the senior high school. I'm glad Secretary Sunny Angara is at the helm, and our industry actually is suggesting that. Oh, by the way, also with the Director General Secretary Kiko Benitez, I'm glad that he's also at the helm of TESDA. Um, Hopefully, CHED will improve. But if you look at this um, players, the DepEd, the TESDA, and the Higher Education Institute, the CHED, these are all crucial for producing the talent we need for the industry. With TESDA, we're working on, in addition to the four training regulations that the semiconductor industry has lodged as NC2, we're going to be working with to produce four more for operators and three for technicians. And then for the senior high school, we hope that TESDA could embed the NC1 and 2s already for the senior high school students who instead of going to college, they want the opportunity to be working already, and some of them may be operators. For technicians, in addition to the NC345 that we're developing, we would like to suggest that there's at least a 6-month apprenticeship period. And for TESDA, we will continue to develop training regulations, and we have action items that Secretary Kiko has asked for, including where we see the development of the SHS and TDIs, and the training provided by the industry would could be enhanced further. So we're working on that, and so eventually the missing piece here really is the improvement in the higher education institute. So with PSAC and obviously the our government, our friends in government, hopefully we'll see that improvement as well. Now going back to your question, right now, the on the SMS or semiconductor side, we produce about 6% of the global demand, and for the EMS side, about 2%. And this, I see this growing if we can realize our plans. Because, for example, like I said, we have IC design, integrated circuit design. You know, we send the prototypes we send the tapes, I should say, to be prototyped in fabs in Taiwan and Germany and other countries. And I'm not sure that the intellectual property is kept intact because obviously you send the tapes, they know what the device will be. So I'm hoping to bring that back in and have that development and that wafer fab in the Philippines so we can not only expedite the lead time, reduce the cost, but preserve the intellectual property for that the devices that our integrated circuit designers are producing here. And so in addition to the training purpose of the fab, the lab scale fab, we will be able to install our prototyping capability. And as we develop, like I said, the ecosystem, including the supply chain, we will be able to demonstrate the world that hey, we're capable. Not if we did well in ATP, we can also do well with wafer fab. Now, there are inherent issues pa rin, ano, because a wafer fab would need inexpensive power and high quality power, and we're not quite there yet. But I think the technology is being developed. For example, using renewable energy. Unfortunately, um, even if we install, DOE said that we're going to be adding about 1900 megawatts of renewable energy. But unfortunately, with battery technologies nowadays, we can only utilize 20% of that. Meaning, after the sun or after the wind, basically is gone, and you store in a battery, you can only use 20% of that capacity when the wind is gone or at night, no? If we can improve the battery technology to increase that capacity, then we would be better off. The other technology-driven solution for power would be considering the use of what we call SMRs or small modular reactors, small modular nuclear reactors. And if you put that right next to the wafer fab, then you will be able to remove the wheeling charges, the transmission cost, the distribution cost, the value added tax, and you will drop significantly the cost of power, no? And the quality can also improve. So while those technologies are not readily available, what we can do is request the president to exercise his authority to give incentives for investments of 1 billion strategic investments that would exceed $1 billion or provide employment of over 10,000 workers. But like you said, to your point, Professor Guido, if we can take these improvements and develop this capability, starting with the wafer fab, grow our IC design, grow our ATP, we could be a very prominent player in the semiconductor electronics supply chain globally in the global market.
Yeah, and really, I mean, Dan is like our visionary, parang our Steve Jobs. If that transpires, you would have, not, I wouldn't say single-handedly because I'm sure you're receiving a lot of help, but at least the vision is, to elevate the country into a global player, like a real serious player. We are, Agnes, we have, a semiconductor industry here that's bigger than I thought. But it could still we could still grow it if we are able to achieve this dream that Dan has. And the senior high school, I agree, will play a big role here. When we implemented the change from regular K to 10 to K to 12, we added 2 years. But so far, I don't think we've leveraged those 2 years enough the kids are getting maximum value from their pre-college days. And that would be one way for us to leverage the STEM students, engineering students, into getting an early start in this industry. And hopefully, I don't know if you need any kind of meeting with Ched. We could help with that. I'm sure you have your contacts there, but hopefully sa tertiary level as well, we can scale up, because bringing in the technology is one thing, but these are all connected, and that's why multiple agencies are working on this: DOST and DepEd, and hopefully CHED, also DTI. Many agencies will be tasked, because this is a coordinated effort. Because once you bring in the technology, not only will you need skilled workers, but you'll also need students who are or graduates who are already knowledgeable, at least in some level, in this kind of technology. And the government private partnerships will play a key role, right, Dr. Dan, in this endeavor.
Correct. And like I said, I'm encouraged with the new administration. I was very discouraged by the previous administration and how they basically practically told the semiconductor industry to go take a hike. Right? You mentioned Nvidia earlier. Uh, when you search the growth of, if you Google the growth of the electronics industry globally, you will see like 10 to 20% growth, right? Well, that's driven by the companies like Nvidia, Broadcom, Qualcomm. But for our industry, we're contracting. And this was because the new products and technologies basically were put by the multinationals in their factories outside the Philippines because of the bad moves of the previous administration, specifically for incentives rationalization. So hopefully, those will be rectified. Maybe not the 5% GIE anymore, or the corporate income tax, because there's this global minimum tax that has been implemented by the multinationals. So whatever they pay in the host country, say for example 5%, they won't enjoy the benefit because they still have to equalize and add 10% for the 15% global minimum tax that the headquarters will be paying. So maybe in terms of other incentives like the ease of doing business, a good talent pool, developed infrastructure. So those are the kinds of things that investors would be looking for. By the way, for Agnes's benefit, and as I mentioned earlier, I spent 16 years in Silicon Valley, so essentially I was an OFW. I was
Wow.
paying Philippine taxes as well. And interestingly enough, my first job in the States was a call center agent
Wow.
before I
Okay.
went to Silicon Valley. But you know what? That's why I'm very confident that Filipinos can run away for fab. In the fabs I have been in Silicon Valley, ang daming Pilipino. And like today, you look at fabs in Taiwan and even in Belgium. We went to this Imtech fab. Engineers, managers, executives, mga Filipinos, and we asked them, why don't you want to come back? Well, there's nothing to come
Exactly.
back to. Walang
Yes.
wafer fab, right? So if we're successful in this, then we can bring in all this. We can bring
Y-
all this talent.
Yun nga
So we
yun. Sorry,
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 sorry.
Agnes. Yeah. So I was remarking now. So we have actually the talent, the educated
Yeah.
Filipinos. Now they can come back, and I think that's what happened also with Taiwan when they were
Mhm.
able to scale up their technologies. They got their engineers who were educated abroad to return home and accept jobs, because there will be jobs available. Agnes, sorry for cutting you off. Yeah.
Yeah, you because and then to add that also, Dr. Guido, no, we have in Technopark, presumably as the Director General of I forgot to
Pesa.
mention this, PEZA, Teresa Panga or Mr. Teo Panga. you had various companies are located in there as locators, so might as well try to, I don't know, the group that had been mentioned or the agencies have been mentioned earlier during the introduction did not even include PESA, but obviously if there's an opportunity to do that, then we can call off or call on a lot of Filipinos who've been they're working in various countries, might as well develop that here in our own country, as they reintegrate with their family.
And thank you for reminding me, Agnes. Ako, baka magtampo sa akin si DJ Teo. He is
Oo nga.
one of the staunch
Yes.
supporters of the industry. Every time we have issues with Comelec, with, customs, our go-to person is DJ Teo, and he's been very responsive. And whenever there are investment leads, you can just bring him to his office, and he just kind of provides a run through of what benefits will be available and what kind of support. So yeah, call out to Digiteo. Thanks also for your support.
Yeah, so a lot of people involved in lending a hand, and and for our yeah, at least for the Filipinos world, right, Agnes? I mean, whatever support we can give in terms of information dissemination, and I mean, hopefully
Ngayon pa lang naisip ko na, Dr. Guido, that there are a lot of OFWs who are already back here in the Philippines, and these, of course, they're technical people. Maybe we can refer to Dr. Dan.
Yeah, right. Might need the technical expertise
Yeah.
of these people, right? Yeah.
But by the way, I might also add that I mentioned Taiwan, and um, yesterday I had the pleasure of meeting chairperson Cheloy, the new chair of MECO in Taiwan.
Yeah.
She left today for MECO, and she's got a good staff and an executive director there, sa MECO nga. And with Anthony Rivera, the executive director. And
Okay.
we requested her, baka pwede, maybe you can help us talk to TSMC and convince them to donate the depreciated equipment. So she took that to heart. So hopefully she can strike a conversation with TSMC and convince them to donate the depreciated equipment. So
Mhm.
So you have a good relationship with TSMC, I gather, or Taiwan.
well, actually, TSMC basically, when asked why don't you put a fab in the Philippines, they will not. I mean, their eyes are on, and I think part of it also is for risk management. They decided to avail of the Chips Act benefits and also put fabs in the United States in case something happens to their homeland. I thought that was a good decision. However, sana naman they don't ignore the Philippines and our capability. I mean, I'm sure at TSMC there's a lot of Filipino engineers and workers there, so
Yeah.
they should know the capability of the Filipino worker.
Right.
I
I'm
bet
sure.
them.
Right. And we have been a good friend to Taiwan, I believe. So
Yes,
you know,
yes.
we have had a good relationship with them. Enough that they even waived the visa requirement for tourists. I don't know kung waive pa rin yun. But yes, do you have something else, Agnes, regarding
Oh, earlier, as we discussed, it's really unmanageable that Philippines to be considered even as the hub of the semiconductor manufacturing. But in retrospect, as you may also look into internal of the country, within ourselves, parang medyo lagging pa tayo sa mga development, and we are on top of producing semiconductors and able to export that globally. How do you see that, in your own opinion, Dr. Dan? How do you see that there's still something that needs an improvement within our own own land? What's your reaction in a very how do you call this in layman's term?
Well, there's still a lot of opportunities for improvement. And it's not
Yes.
a perfect world. We need to improve, for example, our infrastructure, the cost of power, the quality of power. And I know DOE is working hard on that, but the thing is, also not just power, but also with renewable energy. Because as uh, Secretary Lutilla was saying, I think we're the only country that does not have carbon reduction goal in Asia, and we need to do better at that for the future of our children. But they're working hard to ensure the power supply is available, and instead of mga brownouts, which is fatal to the electronics industry. No? And I see also, other agencies working on like DICT, the connectivity and all that. Kasi honestly, our Wi-Fi, our connectivity needs a lot to be improved, and I'm sure you've experienced all that. So I see the other agencies pitching and helping, but in general, yun nga, marami pang OFI opportunities for improvement. I think the education system, especially sa higher education, that needs to improve. In fact, somebody told me, Attorney Joey Ochavia of Unilab Foundation, he compared, for example, like when you see the banners outside the walls of our universities, they show mga top board passers, right? Pero the thing is, for our industry, we don't need board passers. We need the competence. We need the skills. The only registered engineers we need in our industry are those who sign the mechanical drawings and the electrical drawings. And out of thousands of employees, those are only two people. But the rest are competency based because the normal college graduate will need another 1 to 2 years to be trained in our industry to be fully functional. He compared that with India. In India, hindi board passers ang naka-display. It's deployment to what companies and what they're making in terms of salaries. So I think that's, our metrics for our higher education institute is kind of flawed. It's not driven towards competencies, but, they structure the curriculum para makapasa sa board.
Yeah.
Hindi naman lahat ng industries kailangan ng board. Kaya nga, our situation today, in a limited survey of SEIPI, we see that the electrical and ECE engineers have dropped by the enrollment has dropped by 30%. Civil engineering has increased by 60% and IT by 200%. But we need this electrical and ECE engineers if we're gonna grow further the electronics industry, So that's a dilemma that we're faced with, and hopefully we can resolve with CHED.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Dan. Your other questions, Dr. Guido?
Well, ano lang, siguro, since, if we have government agencies listening here, what's your request in public, your wish list, Dr. Dan, sa ating mga government agencies, as we're wrapping up this program?
Well, one of the recommendations for this ITSI fund, as we look at the playbook of Vietnam and Malaysia and Thailand, is to form a national coordinating council, or whatever we call it, to look at in growing the investments in semiconductor industry, hopefully including the wafer fab, and doing what it takes to get the investments and the employment generated, And we are looking for, I guess, a focal person, a leader for this. And this is one of the things we've submitted to Secretary Go for his consideration. And I think once this council is formed, with or without this council, I guess it just behooves us to have the support of the government agencies that can make a difference, from education, from infrastructure, from investments, from technology, and especially from the Office of the President, and to help us, enable us to grow our electronics industry. Of course, We want to see a growth also in the BPO, in the OFW remittances, the agriculture, the infrastructure, tourism, and all the like. But let's not forget the electronics industry, and let's create an environment that will make us successful and help the economy grow further with government support.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right, mga ka-TFW, it's really a fantastic and thorough discussion here, live in the Philippines world. Well, it's one but of the thing that we need to support the semiconductor industry in the Philippines. When we come back, let's have the final words and, of course, say greet some of our friends watching with us live here in the Philippines world. Magbabag po kami.
Mafae Management is a company dedicated to empowering individuals and businesses in PR and marketing, social media management, online show and podcast production, business consulting, graphic design, photography and videography, workshops and classes, events management, personality development, logo creation, illustrations, and animation. In working together to turn their dreams into reality. Get one step closer to elevating yourself and your business by contacting hello@mafaemanagement.com. Let us empower you.
Sign up for a year and pay less than 71 pesos per month. Visit tmt.ph/premium to get your free 30 days of the Manila Times Premium.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This program is in partnership with the Manila Times, ASUL TV, and brought to you by Labmodul, BEXCS Logistics Solutions.
Thank you. You are still watching us live here for our finale in the Filipinos world. I would like to thank, of course, Mafae Management Consultancy for having this live streaming possible. Bayanihan Express Logistics, thank you so much to Miss Marjorie Rubio. Labmodul AS, a company based in Denmark, but of course has a presence here on its sales and marketing and business development in the Philippines. DOST iFWDPH, PLDT Global, the Manila Times, and ASUL TV. For suggestions, comments, and feedback, you may please get in touch via email, thefilipinosworld@gmail.com. And you may follow us in Instagram, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channel, The Filipinos World. Sa gustong sumuporta sa amin dito sa The Filipinos World, maaari kayong magpadala sa stars dito sa Facebook page para mas mapadami pa namin ang content or ang episode na kagaya nito. And of course, let's have a final words, Dr. Guido, from our guest, from Dr. Dan, and from your end too.
Well, I think Dr. Dan has signed off na,
Ah,
Agnes.
okay.
He
And
had to
thank
leave.
you po.
Yeah. So, but
Sige.
yeah, but Agnes, we need visionaries talaga. We need visionaries, and every country that's successful, that has modernized, I mean, has at least one visionary that would push
Yeah.
the the limits of of what's possible. And right now, we're not really gunning for the moon, naman. I mean, this is something that's very achievable. I won't say very achievable, but something that is within reach, at least. Not not gunning for the moon. And what Dan has mentioned about bringing in this technology so that we can manufacture our own wafers. Because right now we have a semiconductor industry, but we don't manufacture the wafers. It's made in Taiwan, and then we import that, and then we put the chips on these wafers, and then these we assemble, and then these are chips
Pero
that's used.
the assemble is done where? Here pa rin ba? Or where?
Well, part of the process is done here in
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, and I didn't even know now. We're actually a player. I know we used to be when we had Intel factories here in the Philippines.
Mm.
But na-explain naman ni Dr. Dan what happened there, and got moved to a different country. But we shouldn't be losing these opportunities to to progress. And this is something that that will help the whole country once we are able to scale up our semiconductor industry. What it will bring in more jobs. It will encourage Filipinos to come back home to the Philippines, because there will be more jobs available, especially for skilled workers. But there will be other jobs as well, not just for the skilled, but other types of employments. I mean, once you have an industry, you'll have stores around it. You'll have restaurants. You'll have the dining. So all these other jobs will also flourish, and that will ultimately help the country, and young education sector will be helped. People will have more education, and yeah, and that's how South Korea and Taiwan and other advanced nations became successful through visionaries, and also with the assistance of government. So government interventions will always help. Yung mga tax breaks, incentives, and partnerships with government agencies. And I'm glad to hear that the Department of Science and Technology, DOST, is active in this role in the semiconductor industry. So yeah, so hopefully, ako, just like you, Agnes, wish ko lang is a better Philippines, where Dan is a patriot, Agnes is a patriot. And, so I like to think I'm a patriot. Yes.
You are a patriot too, and we can convince and you know reach out to other patriots too. So the world, this place can be this country can be a better place to live. Gaya si sinabi kanina ni Dr. Dan, if the government can also support us, how our infrastructure and even especially our electricity or energy can be competitive among other Asian countries. Because as we all know, Philippines is the most expensive, have the most expensive
Right.
energy in Asia. So that our investors and among other companies who wanted to set up here in the Philippines would have the stability and the comfortability of being serviced with our basic services with that of the energy. Yan, ay yung mga klaseng mga program as part of the vision that the Philippines wish to provide for with the foreign investors or companies. Tama ba, Dr. Guido?
Yes, tama. And we just have to overcome some of these problems. I mean, election na set to 2025. I mean, I hope kung may mga nakikinig na people running for government positions, for for Senate, for Congress. I mean, let's focus on the real problems. How do we upscale? How do we help businesses by improving the or easing the doing business here, and which is a major roadblock. I mean, aside from the other roadblocks like cost of electricity, infrastructure, and everything. I mean, we're improving incrementally, but I mean, let's not be afraid to take that major step, moving in the direction to jumpstart the industry and the economy of the Philippines.
And tax natin mataas din compared mo among other ASEAN countries.
That's
So
why
we
tax breaks are important. Yes, for
yeah.
especially for certain industries that we're supporting. I mean, sige, okay, keep the taxes, pero these industries give them tax breaks so that there will be more incentive for them to kasi in the end makakatulong din tong industries na ito. I mean, if it blossoms, diba? There will be taxes and jobs, and then you'll get income tax from the jobs and everything.
When they are located in economic zone, definitely they have tax incentives. So yun nga, kaya pumupunta sila sa mga technoparks and economic zones as locators. Pero yun lang. And it needs another discussion too with the Director General, Teo Pang. Hopefully we can invite him soon here in the Philippines world too. So yun lamang. At dahil oras na para kami mamamaalam, we'd like to say this. For this, we say, where Filipinos shine.
We bring
Philippines closer to the
world. We bring the world closer
to the Filipinos, and the Filipinos closer
to each other.
This has been your TFW Agnes, together with Dr. Guido David and Miss Christine Comon, wishing everyone a blessed weekend. Thank you for joining with us here in the Filipinos world. Stay safe, everyone. Have a blessed weekend. Goodbye. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.